and welcome to LSE Focus. It is post-match reaction show time. We are back for a new season and Liverpool are back in action already after just, I think it's 4 weeks off. We've got a couple of friendlies this week and we kick things off today with a fantastic, very, very impressive 3-0 win against VfB Stuttgart in Austria. Liverpool started things off. We went with pretty much a full strength starting 11, even though in these pre-season games, as we did see today, as we always see, the team changes, almost always changes entirely at half-time, and that is what happened today as well. But it certainly looked like Jurgen Klopp was trying to get his players to gel together as quickly as possible, of course, with that Community Shield match against Arsenal in just a week's time. We have, of course, only got the game we had today and then the game against Salzburg on Tuesday afternoon to prepare for that Charity Shield match. So in some ways, maybe it's not surprising that Jurgen was very much focused on getting those players playing as a unit together, and I certainly wouldn't be surprised if the team that started in that first half is exactly the one that ends up starting in the game against Arsenal. There are only really a couple of surprise inclusions or players in the team that you would maybe not normally associate with the starting 11. Nico Williams played at right back. Normally, of course, you'd expect Trent Alexander-Arnold, but at the moment it's looking like he's either injured or I think there are rumours that he's maybe been tested positive for coronavirus or something like that, but we certainly haven't seen him in any training pictures, so perhaps Jurgen Klopp is expecting Nico Williams to be the starting man against Arsenal. And then of course also Curtis Jones in the absence of Jordan Henderson, and with Gini van Aldum and James Milner both on the bench, they of course got their time to play in the second half. But it certainly looks like Curtis Jones is being lined up for a bigger role this season, and you know, with the word bigger in mind, the lad looks like several inches taller and a couple wider as well. I don't know what's happened in the last 4 weeks, because it's not like we've had a long layoff since we last saw Curtis Jones and the rest of the Liverpool players in action, but he looks like he's grown a bit. He looks a lot more physically imposing. It could be to do with the way he's started to play as well. You know, he imposed himself physically on the game as well, gets a fantastic assist for that first goal for Bobby Firmino. It's lovely movement from him to just twist and turn in the box. He drags like 3 defenders towards him, which is what ends up creating the space for Roberto Firmino, so then Curtis Jones can lay it on the plate for him for a tap-in. Nice to see Firmino get a goal as well, of course. Last season, it wasn't like he was useless in front of goal, and the goals he tended to get tended to be very, very important, often in tricky away games and stuff like that, but it would maybe be nice to see him get on the score sheet a little bit more regularly than he did in the last campaign, and so it's nice to see him get off to a flyer in pre-season. But it was great from Curtis Jones to set him up. In general, it was interesting to see how the midfield functioned, because I think a lot of us expected, looking at the lineup, to be the standard 3 with Fabinho playing in the deepest role and then Keita and Curtis Jones bombing forward. It looked a lot more like Jones was actually, certainly in the first half of that first period, playing about 5 or 10 yards higher up than the other two. Naby Keita dropped deep a hell of a lot more, and Curtis Jones was almost given license to operate in almost what was essentially like a front 4. It almost harked back to the days with Felipe Coutinho when in the first half of the 17-18 season, Felipe Coutinho would be technically part of the midfield 3, but would bomb forward so much, he'd play much higher up the pitch and he'd link up with the front 3 an awful lot. And that's definitely what Curtis Jones seemed to be doing in the early stages of the game today, and that did kind of present its own problem, because normally those midfielders, if they are in the 3 and say Jones was one of the slightly more advanced ones alongside Keita, he'd be expected to offer a bit of cover for the fullback as well. And oftentimes what seemed to happen was Nico Williams would bomb forward, and whether that was to, you know, join in attacks or just to try and press, and that would leave a hell of a lot of space. And when Stuttgart did try and get forward, and to be honest, they didn't really create any chances whatsoever in that first half, but they did get a hell of a lot of space down Liverpool's right hand side. So I don't know whether that was maybe a deliberate tactical thing or whether Curtis Jones was just going slightly gung-ho with his approach, but it did slightly calm down in the latter stages of that first half. Naby Keita got forward a little bit more as well, and it gave Nico Williams that space, because another thing I noticed about Nico Williams was he does love to get forward, and that's great when we're in possession, but he tries to press quite high up the pitch when we're out of possession as well, and that's maybe not something you see so much from Trent Alexander-Arnold. Normally that's the job of the midfielder, that's the job of Jordan Henderson on the right of that midfield 3, to start closing spaces down and try and get counter-attacks going. So maybe it was just because Curtis Jones was drifting inside a little bit more and leaving that space open, and Nico Williams wanted to fill it. And of course, with a player like Joe Gomez at the back, who's got the pace and got the awareness to get into those spaces when the fullback does get caught out, whether it's Trent or whether it's Nico Williams, Williams, it never really presented itself as a huge problem, but it was certainly something to keep an eye on, and I think hopefully Liverpool can sort out that tiny problem before we get to the game against Arsenal, because they have of course got some fantastic attackers that may look to exploit that absolutely tiny weakness in Liverpool's armour. But of course, as Keita was able to progress forward a little bit more as the half went on and the midfield balanced itself out ever so slightly, he gets that absolutely fantastic goal. It's a lovely little move from Mo Salah coming inside, dragging the defence. It's incredibly difficult for defenders to deal with Liverpool when they do things like that, because you just do not know which man to go with. Of course, your man, if you're in the back line, is probably Mo Salah, but as you come out, it creates space for those midfielders. Normally, that hasn't really been a problem for opposition teams, because when we play people like Wijnaldum and Jordan Henderson, they're not so focused on trying to get in behind and create goal scoring chances for themselves. But when you've got people like Jones and Keita in the team, they are going to want to get in behind, get past that defensive line, and it's a beautifully timed run by Naby Keita as well, because he's well onside. There's no question of whether he's timed the run wrong or not, but by the time he receives the ball, he's a good few yards ahead of that entire back line. That gives him the time and the space to play the finish. So it was great play from Naby Keita as well. I thought in general in that first half, what was really important was Liverpool just looked sharp. It didn't really look like they'd had much time off, and in fairness they hadn't, but of course it's been a while since Liverpool have really played intense football because of the position we've been in, coming back from the restart, having the league pretty much already wrapped up, and the way those games went with drinks breaks and large numbers of substitutions and stuff like that. We never really got out of maybe third or fourth gear during those few matches after the restart, and of course now it's a new season. A lot of emphasis has been put on this in the pre-match interviews and stuff like that. Liverpool have got to hit the ground running now. They've got to treat this with the same kind of intensity that they did with the last two campaigns. They can't be complacent, and from what we saw today, it looks like the players are absolutely ready for that challenge, because they flew into the game today, and I thought to a man they were pretty much excellent in that first half. Of course, there were some problems with the weather as well. It was nice to see everyone else come away unscathed, and almost a relief that we even got a second half in the first place, because Jurgen Klopp at halftime certainly didn't look happy with the state of the pitch. But thankfully the rain gave way a little bit, and while it was ever so slightly boggy, it didn't cause too many problems in the second half, although we did have a couple passes that kind of were going on their way. They looked absolutely fine and suddenly would just spin and stop in the middle of the pitch after they hit a puddle of water and stuff like that. But I thought all the players in the second half dealt with that perfectly well. It was guaranteed that it was never going to be a free-flowing Liverpool performance like we've seen in the past, where they're at their absolute top of their game, because it's pre-season, because of the state of the pitch, and because as well in the second half it was different players coming in, and that it was a team that hadn't really played together before. But I thought there were plenty of very, very encouraging performances in that second half. Billy Koumetio is one that I think it's a name that's on everyone's lips after the match. He looked fantastic. He only got about 20 or 25 minutes. He came on for Sepp van den Berg, but he looked light years ahead of, not to be critical of them, but some of the other young centre-halves that have come into Liverpool recently. You know, Sepp van den Berg, Nat Phillips and Kiana Hoover have all looked very solid, and we've seen the potential they've got, and we know that they've potentially got what it takes to succeed at Liverpool if they keep on a kind of upward trajectory. But from the moment Billy Koumetio stepped on the pitch, his stature is obviously incredibly impressive. He's something like 6'5" or something ridiculous, which for a lad who is 17 years old is bonkers, and almost makes you think that maybe he needs to stop growing sooner rather than later, because if he gets any taller he's going to start struggling with his balance and stuff like that. But of course that is all in the future. We don't have to worry about that now. We just have to enjoy the player as he is at the moment, and even though we only got a little bit of a glimpse of him, what he did was brilliant, especially in terms of his ability as a ball playing centre half, and that is something that is so important at the moment coming through the ranks. We've seen when Liverpool have played League Cup games and they've brought youngsters in, there seems to be an emphasis on trying to get them to play the ball, trying to get them to play it out from the back wherever possible and pass it very effectively, not just hoofing it along and stuff like that. And in the past, youngsters have struggled with that a little bit. Billy Koumetio looked absolutely in his element. Some of the passes he was playing, whether it was under pressure or whether it was pinging balls all the way over the top, sometimes not even over the top, he was playing balls that were putting Minamino through one-on-one with the defender or with the goalkeeper, that were along the ground. He was just slicing through the entire Stuttgart side, and that is an incredibly good trait for a centre-back in this day and age to have. And Of course, he did all the other basics reasonably well. He made blocks, he won headers, he did everything you'd want a defender to do. So he looks like a fantastic prospect, and he's come out of nowhere a little bit. No one really knew his name before this preseason, but sometimes those are the players that end up doing the best. Someone where Jurgen Klopp has just taken one look at him and thought, you know what, I think now is your time, and that can kind of benefit a player when they just get thrown into the first team. And Jurgen Klopp seems to think that the best thing for Billy Koumetio right now is to give him as many minutes as possible, to give him as much first team experience as possible. And, you know, if that works out for him, if that proves to be the catalyst to make him a better player, then it could be sooner rather than later that we see him playing more games for Liverpool than maybe any of us had expected before we'd really heard that much about him. And of course, with the current centre-back situation, we've only really got 3 senior centre-halves going into the season: Virgil van Dijk, Joel Matip and Joe Gomez. And Joe Gomez and Matip both have slightly sketchy injury records, so it's entirely likely that we see a hell of a lot of Billy Koumetio this season, and based off what we saw today, that may not even be a very bad thing. We also got our first look at Kostas Tsimikas, who got sorry, a little bit of a baptism of fire after James Milner laid into him for not returning a 1-2. If you'd watched the game, then you may have heard a little bit of, I think, what they called on NFC TV, colourful language from James Milner, which is a good thing, I think. It's obviously part of what makes Liverpool so great at the moment, that all the players hold each other to a very, very high standard. And I thought Tsimikas met that standard reasonably well for a lad who's only just come into the side, playing his first 45 minutes of 11-a-side football in a Liverpool shirt against an opponent that isn't just some of the other lads on his team in training or anything like that. He got on the ball a lot. It was interesting to see his dribbling as well, which is one of the things that was mentioned when he first signed as something that does set him aside from Andy Robertson. We know that he does like to get to the byline. He likes to get forward. He's a good crosser with the ball as well, but he doesn't mind dribbling and coming inside to do that as well, which is something we don't see very often from Andrew Robertson, and that could be an extra weapon in Liverpool's arsenal. It could make him a little bit more unpredictable, a little bit more difficult to defend against. We saw it a couple of times today, and he looked very solid. He looked comfortable on the ball. It's an interesting thing, his dribbling technique, because some people have described it as where it almost looks like the ball is always getting away from him, but he somehow never loses it. And that's almost the best trait for a dribbler to have, because it makes them so difficult to predict what they're going to do next. So that was a great thing to see him have in his arsenal. When he got in some good crosses as well, he got into good positions, made the right runs. He never looked like he was in a rubbish position or anything like that, and he looked good defensively as well. He comes across to make a few blocks. He covered for his teammates when necessary. So a really, really solid debut from Kostas Tsimikas, and he certainly looks like the kind of lad who could play 20 games this season. He doesn't look like someone where you're looking at him as backup for Andrew Robertson and thinking, oh, I'd rather we just played Robbo as much as possible. It almost looks like it could potentially be a horses for courses kind of thing, where you look at a certain opponent and think maybe Tsimikas is more suited to this. Obviously, Andrew Robertson has spent a lot of time at Liverpool. He's built up enough of a reputation and enough of a pedigree here that he will continue to be the first choice left back for the moment at least. But it did look like if we went into a game against a mid-table team or a side lower down the table and we were starting Tsimikas, no one's going to be tearing their hair out. Everyone, I think, is going to be looking at that lad and thinking that he has got what it takes to succeed in a Liverpool shirt. Elsewhere in the second half, we also got to see some nice appearances from Minamino, who looked very, very good, very, very strong, looked much more open to taking other players on as well, looked open to the physical battle. I think the same went for Keita and Brewster as well, who he doesn't necessarily look like he's bulked up, certainly not like Curtis Jones has. He doesn't look taller or stronger or beefier or anything like that, but he did seem more open to engaging opposition centre-halves in a way that maybe we didn't see as much last pre-season. Last pre-season, we could tell he was a great finisher. You could tell that he had what it took to be a good centre-forward for Liverpool and to potentially even rival Roberto Firmino a little bit further down the line for that centre-forward spot. But it never quite looked like he was able to go toe-to-toe with proper, large grok centre-halves. And I think going away to Swansea, it hasn't necessarily made a difference to him physically, but mentally he looks more open to that kind of challenge. He looks like he wants to hustle for the ball, to try and muscle them off, to try and cause them problems. It was mentioned on commentary, a lot of championship defenders describe Keita and Brewster as an absolute pest. He just wouldn't go away. He'd always be closing them down. And that's what you want from a striker in this Liverpool team. And of course, he gets the goal as well. He's in the right position. He puts the ball away. It looks quite similar to a lot of the goals that he did score for Swansea City. A lot of them were from about 5 or 6 yards out. And those are the goals that strikers like him are going to absolutely love. So long may that sort of thing continue. So a really positive performance from Keita and Brewster and from Takumi Minamino, which has kind of settled my own, I wouldn't say nerves, because it's hard to be nervous about anything regarding this Liverpool side at the moment. They tend to have pretty much everything locked down and spot on, and we don't seem to have any problems whatsoever. But if there was one concern going into this season, especially given the packed schedule, it was squad depth and whether there was going to be a huge drop-off when we tried to draft other players in. Of course, that first choice front three is fantastic, and there's inevitably going to be some sort of drop-off in quality, because no team can have 6 players of the quality of that front three all on their books at once. It just does not happen. But from what I saw from Firmino and Keita and Brewster, and also Harvey Elliott today, looked very solid. It doesn't look like we'd have a huge problem if we had to start bringing them off the bench or rotating them into the side. All of them look very, very strong today, and they cause a lot of problems, and they look like they were gelling into the Liverpool system that is, of course, so very important. So I was very pleased with the performance today. Like I said, under the conditions, it was nice to also see no injuries whatsoever. With that Arsenal game in a week's time, it's great that everyone looks incredibly sharp. I think it's going to be an interesting one how this season plays out. I don't think sharpness early on is necessarily going to be a problem. I think most teams will hit the ground running because of the shortness of the break. What's really important is whether Liverpool can get all the way through to the long haul, and that's why I've mentioned squad depth and why I've spent a lot of time talking about the lads who came on in the second half of the game, because they are going to see more football this season than maybe they would have done in a normal campaign. And at the moment, it looks like Liverpool have got the squad depth and the squad unity to take on this challenge with open arms. So here's to the new season. Here's to Liverpool hopefully picking up loads more silverware, winning number 20, winning number 7, winning everything else they want to win, starting with that Charity Shield on Saturday. We have, of course, got that game against Salzburg on Tuesday afternoon. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be around to watch that game, but I am going to watch it afterwards, and then hopefully deliver you guys a post-match reaction at some point on the Wednesday, the day after the game. But until then, thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy this video, as always, you know what to do. Hit the like button down there, hit that subscribe button there if you're new around here. Check out some of the other videos that have been out on the channel previously. Don't forget to follow at LFC Focus TV on Twitter, and I'll see you on Wednesday after the Salzburg game. Until then, bye for now.